What's going on, everyone? So it is Friday, which means it's time to close out the week with some of the new spoilers that we got over the past couple of days, as we are slowing down in the amount of spoilers that we're getting on every single day. Previously, it was FFG doing live streams, revealing like 10, 15 cards, but now we're getting regularly like 1 to 2 a day. And so we are kind of doing that wrap up through the week. So we've got the last couple days of cards, new leader, and some pretty sweet, in fact, one of the sweetest cards I have seen in the entirety of Star Wars Unlimited. Not saying that it's insane, but that it is absolutely sweet in terms of flavor. Before we get started, guys, big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. We've been playing some games, chatting, etc. Check it out down below. Also, I have a TCG player link. Be sure to use it in the description down below if you want to pick up any Star Wars Unlimited cards. Let's get started with the sweetest card I have seen in the entirety of Star Wars Unlimited, and that is General Grievous. 3-cost ground unit in Vigilance Villainy. I'm very surprised that it's Vigilance. I would have very much expected Aggression. You could even drop Cunning as the aspect. I think the only one that really doesn't make sense is Command. I think Vigilance is probably the second least likely I would have expected. I would have expected Cunning or Aggression. Even the leader for him is Cunning, but okay, we got a Vigilance Villainy leader or a unit. He's a 4/4 Separatist official for 3 resources. That's a really nice stat line. It's one of the better stat lines that we've seen. Already that's exciting. But get this. He ignores the aspect penalty on each lightsaber upgrade you play on him. And on attack, if he has 4 or more lightsaber upgrades attached, defeat 4 enemy units. Mind you, this can hit capital ships, it can hit rancors, it can hit any unit, it can hit leaders, as long as you got 4 upgrades, 4 lightsaber upgrades attached to him. I absolutely love this. Okay, so let's first talk about just the base level of him. As I said, 3 resource, 4/4 in Vigilance Villainy. That's a good stat line. I like the Separatist tag. If there is some sort of kind of build out, going a little bit more wide with the battle droid tokens, and you want the Separatists, or maybe there's like a Separatist Vigilance curve out deck, I could definitely see General Grievous being played in there. Just for the 3 resource 4/4 stat line with the Separatist tag. That might just be good enough already to play General Grievous, which is already pretty impressive, okay? It's going to dwarf Fighters for Freedom. It's going to dwarf like Ezra Bridgers, like all the very common 3 resource plays that we're seeing in the meta. It basically just kills them and lives with like 1 HP, which is really strong. It also, if you do have a 2 resource play and it's like a 2/4 or something like that, or a 1/4 like R2, guess what? It's able to kill it. That 4th point of power is really important. So I love that about General Grievous, okay? Now for the lightsaber portion of it. If you were to open the card list, let me do that real quick, and pull up every single possible lightsaber, okay? And remember, it's just 4 lightsaber upgrades. So as long as it's got the lightsaber tag and it's not unique, you can apply the same lightsaber over and over again, and it will be counting towards the total. But if we pull open just the lightsaber options we have, assuming we're not going to play heroism lightsabers in our deck, we have 3 cards that we could play. And remember, he's Vigilance, which means that you can really only realistically play one or the other, Aggression or Command cards, without paying the aspect penalty extensively. And that leaves us most likely with 2 lightsabers, and that's Vader's lightsaber and Fallen lightsaber. Mind you, Vader's lightsaber is unique. So we are only using Fallen lightsaber. And you need all 3 of them plus 1 copy of Vader's lightsaber to get this trigger. Now I know people are like, wait, why are we ignoring Jedi lightsaber, Luke's lightsaber, General's blade? Because you can ignore the aspect penalties on General Grievous, right? Well, that's just to make a more cohesive deck, right? But let's say you wanted to go all in on the strategy of ignoring all the aspect penalties for Grievous and just go all in on Grievous with this lightsaber strategy. Well, you have 15 different cards in your deck that could be applied to General Grievous. Again, mind you, Vader's lightsaber and Luke's lightsaber are unique, which means you cannot apply duplicates of them. So if you were to draw like 2 Luke's lightsabers, a General Blade, and a Jedi lightsaber, you could not apply 4 lightsabers to him. So that does lessen the amount of cards you have available. 15 cards that's not going to happen a lot, okay? You need to not only draw, but you also need to apply 4 of those 15 cards to a single 4/4. And remember, any sort of Power of the Dark Side, Fell the Dragon, Rivals Fall will take out General Grievous, and you will be very, very sad. So this, to me, is like a meme part of it. It's never going to happen. I'm going to make a deck, and we are going to try to make it happen. Mind you, I will 100% try to make this happen, but I very much doubt that it will ever happen, or if we could even get a single game where we can apply all those lightsabers to General Grievous. There might be more lightsabers that we will see going forward. And maybe if they add a couple more separatist units that are like in vigilance or maybe like aggression or something like that, like Fifth Brother, maybe we could start applying to like a bunch of force units and get some sort of deck running where we don't just completely rely on General Grievous, so we can actually have a functional deck when we play this deck. Because again, I will do this. There's no doubt in my mind I'm going to be making a General Grievous lightsaber deck. I just don't think that's really the part of the card that even is relevant. I highly doubt that there's going to be a single competitive game where you're going to see a General Grievous with 4 lightsabers on him, okay? And attack with it, mind you. You have to get the 4 lightsabers and then attack, and then you could defeat units. Regardless, 3 resource 4/4, still quite good, and I'm pretty excited about that. Very sweet card, absolutely amazing flavor. Next up, we got a 5 resource ground unit. Now, this card I think is actually pretty strong. Ayla Secura, Command Heroism, 6/5 Force Jedi Republic. By the way, this is a legendary. I'm a little bit surprised we saw like Ki-Adi-Mundi and Kit Fisto not with the heroism tag. Ki-Adi-Mundi makes a little bit more sense, but Kit Fisto not having the heroism tag doesn't really make too much sense to me, at least. And this being a legendary is kind of crazy, but it has an ability, or Ayla has an ability, coordinate on attack, prevent all combat damage that we dealt to this unit for this attack. So it's kind of like what's it called? A Han Solo unit where you get to attack first and not take any damage if you're able to kill him. Now, this has the upside even if you don't kill that unit, you're still able to prevent all damage to Ayla. But the real big restriction is the fact that you need 2 other units on the battlefield. And again, we've seen a lot of unit/token generating cards that are within the set for set 3. Again, if I were to talk about set 1 and set 2, it'd be hard to get 2 other units on the battlefield when this comes down. Another thing that I have to mention is anytime you see a unit that's under 6 costs, usually around the 5 to 6 cost mark, because those are the important costs where you can get the most value out of ECO. Well, this one can be ECL'd out. And it kind of acts as like a free kill. Kind of how Poe Dameron works, where it's such a high stat line where you get to kill something and allow Poe Dameron to survive, and maybe even kill 2 separate things with the on attack trigger. Well, this card will be able to be ambushed out and potentially kill something and then stick around as a 6/5. And mind you, because you've just killed one of their units, probably unable to kill your units now, and because you've had coordinate, assuming that you attack with coordinate, so Ayla survived, you will have that coordinate attack on the next turn. And because you've used your ambush, you immediately take in your action, which means you could potentially claim initiative immediately after. And there's not many cards at the 5 resource point, even at the 6 resource point, they'll be able to survive an Ayla Secura attack, okay? So this is actually a pretty interesting one to me, and I could definitely see this being played as an ECL option in the kind of finishing part of the maybe Command Heroism decks, right? This just seems like a really nice option for ECL, and I could definitely see it being used for that purpose. But you need the correct deck to trigger the coordinate, because if you're just using this as a 6/5 ambusher, I would not be playing Ayla Secura most likely. If you are playing Heroism Aggression as well, you could also just use Poe Dameron instead. And honestly, I still think Poe Dameron's a little bit more strong. The one other thing that is kind of better for Ayla Secura, if it's relevant enough in your deck, is that she does have the Jedi Republic and Force tags. So maybe that's some advantage for you. But hey, maybe you could play like a Command Heroism Aggression deck with Force throws now because you have Ayla Secura. I don't know. On to the next one, we got ourselves Synchronized Strike. This is a 2 resource event in Command Heroism. Deal damage to an enemy unit equal to the number of units you control in its arena. So now, first thing, this is basically unplayable in the space arena side of things. You almost never will have enough space units to make this something that's relevant. You don't have like space generating tokens. Like you can't generate, I don't know, little Arc 170s or whatever in the space. However, in the ground, there's a lot of Clone Trooper Battle Droid token generating effects. This could definitely deal 2 to 3, maybe even 4 to 5 damage on the regular. If you have a deck built around Synchronized Strike, or maybe not necessarily Synchronized Strike specifically, but around the token theme, it's very likely to see a 2 resource deal 4 damage. That seems reasonable to me. And you do have to hit an enemy ground unit with this, because your Clone Trooper tokens will be in the ground arena. Now, we've seen Admiral Akbar, and Admiral Akbar has certainly popped up a lot. The question for me, and this is something that I think isn't really a question, would I want Synchronized Strike or would I want Admiral Akbar? And I think 9 times out of 10, if I'm building a deck and I want this effect, I'd want Admiral Akbar, because not only is he going to benefit all the coordinate things that I'm doing, most likely because I'm relying on a lot of units, he's also a unit himself, so he can just attack, not just contributing to the coordinate. And he gets you an extra damage while playing that Synchronized Strike effect, right? So you get the body that you could attack with, you get the body for coordinate, and you get the body for the effect itself when you play Admiral Akbar. So let's say you have a couple Clone Troopers, like you played a Batch Brothers or whatever. Turn 1, you played a unit. Let's say they killed off whatever units. You got 2 units in the battlefield. Playing this deals 2 damage, which is okay. Playing an Admiral Akbar is going to deal 3 damage. And usually 3 damage is a lot better than 2 damage in this game. Although, we will see. I think that there is possibility you could be playing both, but at least in my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, I think I'd reach Admiral Akbar over this 9 times out of 10 if I want this type of effect. Not to mention, Admiral Akbar could also do space as well. Clone Heavy Gunner is the next one. 2 cost ground unit in aggression. 1/3. By the way, why is this not a heroism unit? I don't understand. Are they trying to say that the clones are not a heroic force? I think the clones are the most heroic force. I don't know. I think they're just doing this because they want to have a few more options cross aspects. But to me, this is a heroism unit through and through. Anyways, 2 cost ground unit in aggression. 1/3 Republic Clone Trooper. Pretty straightforward. Coordinate. This unit gets +2/+0. To me, this is not really that playable. If this was a 2/3 for 2, I would consider it. Let's say this had coordinate, this unit gets +1/+0, or you can even keep it coordinate, this unit gets +2/+0, and it's got a 2/3 base stat line. I think that'd be good enough. It is a common, so you have to consider that. It's probably low power level for that. It does have relevant tags in Republic Clone Trooper, but I don't think that you're going to get coordinate immediately every game to the point where it's going to be a reliable 2 resource 3/3. And even if it's a 2 resource 3/3, it's not like it's that crazy, right? It is good. We've seen how Battlefield Marine still pops up to this day, but it's not like, oh my gosh, I get a 4/3 for 2 resources, right? That's a lot better of a stat line. And so if I'm thinking, okay, turn 1, I play a Clone Heavy Gunner, and I don't have the initiative, and they play a Battlefield Marine, it's over. Probably the whole game is over. If you're thinking about what this deck is trying to do, I'm playing the Republic Clone Trooper kind of archetype. I want to generate a lot of bodies. I want to get this coordinate activated. Not only did you waste 2 resources in a card essentially to deal 1 damage to your opponent's Battlefield Marine, but you also have stalled to the point where your other coordinate cards are going to get a lot weaker. That's kind of how I look at Clone Heavy Gunner. Maybe if there's some other options that really do generate a ton of tokens in the early game, maybe Clone Heavy Gunner, like you can go turn 1, generate 2 tokens, turn 2, play a Clone Heavy Gunner as a 3/3. But I don't even know if that's good enough either. We will have to see. This card looks pretty mediocre to me. Again, if it's a 2/3 stat line, I'd be a little bit more excited about this because it could turn into a 4/3. And then you're like, oh, 2/3, I get 2 damage on a unit if they play a 3/3. There are 2/3s in the meta that do some work with the relevant tags. Like Yularen is one of them, for example. It's probably the most played one. It's Scanning Officer is another one that's being played as a 2/3. Sabine Wren, although she attacks as a 3/3, but she's another 2/3 that gets played in the meta. 2/3s do get played, but it needs to have some sort of relevant ability, and all of them do. They either have the official tag, or they just attack for more, or they have some other thing going for them. Clone Heavy Gunner, literally, you have to work for it to be a Battlefield Marine, which is kind of awkward. Next up, we got On the Doorstep. I know a lot of people were excited about this one. I am also pretty excited about it. It's a 4-cost event in Cunning Villainy. Create 3 Battle Droid tokens and ready them. It's really straightforward. This is the type of event that I would be pretty excited about, trying to build the Battle Droid token deck. And maybe the go wide, maybe even just lose Grievous deck and go wide with the Battle Droid tokens and attack your opponent, not even necessarily exploit. But that's another thing that we have to consider, is that this is in villainy, which means it's going to usually lean towards the exploit mechanic, because exploits related to villainy for the most part. So if you play this, let's say you play On the Doorstep and you get a 6-cost card, or let's say you have, I don't know, 2 additional resources, you could get a 6-cost discount on another card, right? So you could use On the Doorstep essentially as a way to generate 6 resources for another card. So that's something you could do. You could just play this and then immediately attack with them, which is 3 damage immediately at base. But there are some units that we've already seen that buff up Battle Droid tokens. So that could be, maybe 6 damage immediately for 4 resources. The fact that it immediately readies them makes me want to lean towards like the General Grievous leader, sort of like Sentinel up a couple units, defend your more important leader separatists, and then use these Battle Droid tokens just to go wide and attack your opponent with other separatist synergies. This seems pretty sweet. It's a little bit simple. It's not necessarily something that's like, oh my gosh, this is mind breaking. But these, again, are the cards that, generally speaking, make these decks function. And this is the type of card that I would be pretty happy with dropping in on 4 resources. It's kind of tedious to get rid of 3 tokens, unless your opponent has one of the hate cards, which there are a lot of, so maybe that's just too unfortunate. Unless they're also going Clone Troopers, and then they just knock out all your Battle Droid tokens one by one with their Clone Trooper tokens. So I think this is going to be a good way to get in some damage. But again, if you're playing like General Grievous, maybe you can give something Sentinel for the turn, and get something going. I don't know. We'll see. Again, not quite done with all the set, so I think this is a nice glue piece, but we'll have to get our final judgment a little bit later. So let's talk about Jango Fett. I know that a lot of people are excited about Jango Fett. I was as well, and I might have a hot take on this because I think a lot of people disagree with me, but I think it's going to be one of the worst set 3 leaders. Maybe average, but average to like below average is what my initial impression should be. And I could see him being one of the worst set 3 leaders. We haven't seen them all, so I'm going to reserve that judgment. But to me, this is like an above / or below average to average leader. He's a cunning villainy leader with a 5 flip. When a friendly unit deals damage to an enemy unit, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, exhaust that enemy unit. On the flip side, he flips as a 3/7. And says, when a friendly unit deals damage to an enemy unit, you may exhaust that unit. So let's talk about the front side. The most notable thing is that his comparison to Boba Fett is like not even close. So first off, if I'm playing Cunning Villainy, I immediately think Boba Fett. Boba Fett has the exact same tags as Jango Fett. It has the same flip cost. It has a better stat line and arguably a more universal and better ability. Not to mention, one of the specific cards that references Jango Fett also references Boba Fett, and that's Fett's Fire Spray. So I was pretty excited. I was like, maybe we could use Fett's Fire Spray in Jango Fett. But already it seems like Jango Fett is pretty weak. The ability, the most obvious use is just combat damage, right? You play a couple Battle Droid tokens, you attack your opponent's big units, you sacrifice them essentially to exhaust that unit. That seems okay, right? Because you usually don't want to use your big units, because if you are, then you probably just kill the enemy unit, right? That's probably what happens. So then let's consider a little bit of the more nuanced options. And this only is relevant for the backside because Jango Fett's front side says you can only exhaust essentially 1 unit, because whenever a friendly unit deals damage to an enemy unit, you may exhaust this leader, then exhaust that enemy unit. So you must choose an enemy unit. On the flip side, though, so when you deploy Jango Fett, it says when a friendly unit deals damage to an enemy unit, you may exhaust that unit, period. You don't have to exhaust Jango Fett. So The first card people were considering is Overwhelming Barrage, but we've talked about Overwhelming Barrage. If we just pull up the card here, if we just pull up Overwhelming Barrage in the card list, this does not work. Why? It says, give a friendly unit +2/+2 for this phase, then it deals damage equal to its power divided as you choose among any number of other units. This doesn't give that ability to that unit. It is an ability from Overwhelming Barrage. If we look at another card, this card does work. Let's say Vambrace, I think it's Vambrace Flamethrower, I believe. Yeah. This says, attached to a non-vehicle unit, attached unit gains. So that's a huge difference. It says attached unit gains, which means that card, that unit gains this ability to, when you attack with it, you may deal 3 damage divided as you choose among enemy ground units. So for example, let's say you put a Vambrace Flamethrower on your unit. You were to attack the opponent's base. Well, suddenly you get to exhaust 3 enemy ground units, should you choose to, which is okay. That's okay. What's another card that works with it? Well, a card that might be a little bit surprising, but Heavy. I hope Heavy is on here. Heavy is on here. When Heavy's defeated, you deal 1 damage to each enemy ground unit. Well, guess what? That would allow you to exhaust all of them if you have Jango Fett on the battlefield. But let's consider this for a second. Heavy's not that bad of a unit, but if you're playing, let's say, Cunning Villainy with Aggression, is this the combination that you want to be running? Is this good enough? Are you able to actually win the game while doing all these things? Or are you going to be playing weak cards like Vambrace Flamethrower, which isn't even a card that anyone is playing anywhere, only to work with a leader ability that isn't even relevant all the time, and only when Jango Fett's on the battlefield, on top of it not being relevant all the time? No. Almost never is that really a good combination of a good sequence of events for you to win the game. Think about what has to happen here, okay? A, you need to be fighting an opponent that does not have the initiative, because if they do, they can just kill whatever. Assuming you don't even already have Vambrace Flamethrower on them. Let's say you have the initiative and you need to put Vambrace Flamethrower on something and then attack with it. That's 2 additional actions, which your opponent knows what's coming, so they can attack with their units already. Mind you, again, you're going to have the initiative most of the time in order to exhaust something. The second thing that's going to happen is that your opponent needs to be playing multiple units. Because if they're not, then I suppose you could exhaust like 1 unit at a time. Or if you are playing the Vambrace Flamethrower type combo, maybe you can exhaust multiple units, but they need to be playing multiple units at a single time in order to get that much value from it. The third thing that needs to happen is that you need to have Jango Fett on the battlefield and for him to not die in order for this to even be relevant at all, because otherwise you're just exhausting 1 unit at a time, and that's only with combat damage for the most part, because again, there's only very few cards in the game that's able to exhaust things with outside combat damage. That is way too specific and way too many things to have to go right in order for you to play Jango Fett. Mind you, and again, I will say this again, you are competing directly with a Boba Fett leader. The same aspects, the same leader flip, the same tags, a weaker stat line, all of those things, while also being a sort of tempo leader where you're trying to exhaust your opponent and outrace them, or exhaust your opponent's units and then outvalue them in late game. Can Jango Fett lead you to a better circumstance than Boba Fett can? Right? If you're trying to race them, is it better to have exhausted a couple of your opponent's units, maybe avoiding a couple of tags, maybe sacrificing your own units, or sacrificing damage to their base to exhaust their units? Or is it better just to kind of do your own thing, ignore your opponent, bounce things, ready more resources, and then outplay them with just more resources on the battlefield? I would wager to say, and I don't think that I'm unique in saying this, that Boba Fett is just going to be a far superior option for most options. And again, I think he'll be like a below average leader. He could be somewhere on the average range, and I'm open to being wrong, but there's just nothing really that appeals to me about Jango. And all the like unique synergies with like Heavy and Vambrace Flamethrower. Heavy seems to be an okay card, but in order for him to be an okay card, guess what? You're going to need him to kind of have that coordinate. Otherwise, it's kind of like average. Heavy's like seems to be a little bit above average if you get the coordinate synergy and everything. Without it, just seems like an average option. So is that worth going into aggression cutting with Jango Fett to play heavy? Probably not. Why would you build your whole deck around him? Is it worth playing Vambrace Flamethrower, which is not even a good card and hasn't really seen any play whatsoever, with Jango Fett just to get the Jango Fett trigger when he's flipped? Probably not. Maybe some sideboard options here, but to me, this just seems like an extremely weak leader that I would not see at all. Like, I just don't expect it to see play all that much when he's directly fighting against Boba Fett's slot. And I know a lot of people are excited about him. I know a lot of people are like, oh man, this seems sweet. You get to exhaust so many units. I just don't think that's realistic, and that's going to happen a lot. Again, we could see that change because we're going wide with wide strategies, and maybe there's some other card that allows you to deal damage a lot. Like there's a lot more cards that allow you to deal units that allow you to deal damage to a bunch of different units. Maybe, but I just don't see that being the case. And I would put my money on Boba Fett being just the more prevalent leader in basically any scenario that you wanted Jango Fett in. But that's going to be all the cards we got today, guys. What did you think about General Grievous? The sweetest card that we've seen in Star Wars Unlimited. Ayla Secura, absolutely amazing legendary, looks like to me. Clone Heavy Gunner, pretty weak comment on the Doorstep. Seems like a nice little fit piece for the exploit / maybe separatist deck. And Jango Fett. If he had the Separatist tag, I would be a lot more hopeful because Separatist tag is important with this set, but he doesn't. He's the same tags as Boba Fett. All right, I'm done with Jango Fett, guys. Let me know how wrong I am in the comment section down below, or let me know how right I am in the comment section down below. I'm interested to hear what you say. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all for the next one.